Hi all, my name's Erica, aka ECR Horses 1901, and guess what? It's time for a new set of tier ranking videos. This time of Breyer's Classic, aka Freedom Series molds. Just to refresh everyone's memories, I started this channel about a year ago with a series of, I think, 10 videos tier ranking every traditional scale Breyer mold. What can I say? I enjoy tier ranking videos. I like watching other people do them. I enjoy doing them. It's a win-win. So, since it's been about a year since the last time I did this, I went ahead and created one for the classic scale on tiermaker.com. Now, before we dive in, since people have found my original tier ranking videos, well past the time that I finished that series, I've gotten some recommendations or requests for things that I could do to make them better, which obviously, because people were commenting after the fact, I couldn't implement in real time. So instead, I will do my best to implement those changes this time around. First thing is that people thought it would be useful for me to define what I mean by the different tiers. So we're going to start off by doing just that. As you can see, we are using the same tiers as last time. We have S at the top, followed by A, B, C, D, and F. S tier means I love this mold. I think it's a great representation of the breed it's supposed to be, and I also like many of the models that have been done on this mold. I'm not going to lie, I don't think we're gonna have a ton of these on the classic scale, but we'll get into it as we go. An example of an S tier mold from the traditional scale is the Spanish Stallion, aka Duende, who you see one example of here. A tier means it's a good mold, but I don't think it is the best mold. I like it, but I don't love it, even if I think it's really well done. An example here is the Australian Stock Horse, aka Dundee mold. B tier means I like the mold a lot, but it is not the best. An example of this mold in traditional scale is the Cantering Welsh Pony. He is a personal favorite due to having this one, Tara, as a kid, but because it's a mold with problems, okay? I can acknowledge that, and it's also not the best mold for showing, so that bumps it down a couple of notches. C tier is fine. It's not great, but I don't dislike it. Or I do like it, but again, since showing is a priority for me, maybe it's not great in that aspect. Examples in traditional scale include all of the family Arabians. When we get down to D tier, there is something I actively do not like about the mold. But at the same time, it's not offensively bad. Just one example from traditional is Buckshot, seen here. Some people like him, I do not. F tier is bad, and there is something that I strongly dislike about the mold. I've been slowly working my way through my F tier molds from the traditional scale in my So You're an F tier video series, of which I most recently covered C Star, and we'll be talking about Midnight Sun, the Tennessee walking horse, at some point in the future. So I hope that sheds a little bit of light on why I put certain molds in particular tiers. Also, when it comes to the classic scale, I will be referring to it solely as classic scale rather than freedom scale, because I grew up when they were still called classic, so that is what feels more natural to me. There are 77 molds altogether. This will take about 4 weeks if we talk about approximately 20 molds per week. Therefore, without any more further ado, let's jump in. American Quarter Horse Foal, aka Frolicking Foal. Introduced in 2005, sculpted by Kathleen Moody. I like this foal mold quite a bit. I think it shows a good amount of personality, and I can't really judge the conformation of him too harshly because he is a foal, and he captures the awkwardness of that age. Some of my favorites on this mold include No Name, a buckskin sold at Target in 2007, and a couple of decos. First, we have Casper from the Casper and Jack 2015 Halloween web special, and perhaps surprisingly, Xander from the Zoe and Xander Unicorn set, who were sold in 2019. I will admit my enjoyment of this particular model stems from my little lime green stablemate unicorn on the Playful Foal mold, and the fact that this reminds me of him. He unexpectedly did well for me at an all-mini show earlier this year, and if you've been following this channel, you know my affection for any given model is a direct correlation to how well it does for me in shows. Otherwise, it's straight to the basement. Anyway, American Quarter Horse Foal, A tier. American Quarter Horse Mare, introduced in 2005, sculpted by Kathleen Moody. She's nice. She is a nice stock horse mold, in my opinion. The biggest mark against this mold, when I'm thinking of how to rank it, is that there haven't been many models on it that I actually like all that much. Most of them are just okay. Most notably, this has been used as the mare mold in a series of AQHA family sets sold at Walmart in 2007, which included lines such as, and I do mean bloodlines, such as Hollywood Gold, Poco Bueno, Leo, unfortunately there was no family shot, so here is just the mare, and Blue Gold. If I had to pick a favorite, I think I'd stick with the one I originally had on the screen, the initial regular run model who was around from 2005 to 2008. Let's go with B tier. American Quarter Horse Stallion, aka Frolicking Stallion, introduced in 2005, sculpted by Kathleen Moody. Of the three American Quarter Horse molds, this is my least favorite. His movement looks stilted, and there's something funky about that left foreleg. Well, despite how I feel, this mold has been used quite a bit by Breyer. And speaking from a strictly aesthetic appeal, there are more models that I like on him than on the mare, and maybe even on the foal. We have this very nice chestnut from the Playful Pony family, a 2023 Tractor Supply set. Then we have 2008's Bay Appaloosa, which was only sold at Meijer's and some other retailers. Maybe not the most detailed Appaloosa, but overall, he has appeal. I'm also quite fond of Sugar, the very rainbow bright coated unicorn who was sold at Walmart in 2020. This ranking might change, but for now, we'll put the stallion in B tier. American Saddlebred, introduced in 2018, sculpted by Unknown. This guy sprung on the scene as Mason, 2018 Horse of the Year, and he's been used consistently since then, but mostly as a decorator. The only other realistic model was this Palomino Saddlebred from 2023. Otherwise, he's most notably been around as the Lisa Frank-esque 90s throwback from 2021 through the present. Fun fact, that was one of my first purchases last year when I got back into collecting, because I am smack dab in the age range for whom Lisa Frank was very much a thing. In 2019, he became part of Breyer's Halloween series as Salem with literal cat track paw prints and actual cat designs you can see within his Pinto markings. I like this mold quite a bit, but would love to see some more realistic coat colors, and furthermore, some better detailed realistic coat colors on this guy. A tier. Andalusian Foal, introduced in 1979, sculpted by Chris Hess. As we will see, there are some classic-sized vintage molds that I like. This little guy is not one of them. Nevertheless, he has been used a ton since 1979 in many, many sets, whether with another foal, like in the Colorful Gift set, a regular run from 2005 to 2006. Let's take a closer look at that Appaloosa coat. Seriously, just take a good look. Or it's been him with a mare such as 1993's Proud Mare and New Foal, or as he came originally with a mare and a stallion Believe it or not, this guy has been his own standalone Breyerfest auction lot 3 times. Twice were test colors, so that makes some sense. We don't have pictures of any of those models, nor do we have selling prices for the 2 1993 lots, but the non-test color 1994 full sold for just $150 and had the lowest selling price for any horse auction model that year. The only thing that sold for less was a dressage saddle prototype. And I do mean model size. Taking a closer look at the list on Identifier Breyer, this mold actually has not been used since 2008, and some of the last few models on it weren't terrible color-wise. The only one I'd say I'm partial to is 2002's Buckskin Pinto from the Spirit Keeger Mustang family set. He's kinda cute. I don't hate him, but he is straight to D tier. Andalusian Mare, introduced in 1979, sculpted by Chris Hess. Yikes. Well, everything about this mold really, screams early Breyer-ish, so there's that. Otherwise, this horse looks wrong from every possible angle. It hasn't been used since 2006, and it's never really had great coloring, so I honestly can't even point to a single example of this mold that I think is okay. It was a Breyerfest live auction once, also in 1994, as a semi-gloss rich bay. This is as large of a picture as we have of it. It sold for $250 though, which was not the lowest that year. That honor went to the Andalusian Foal. Nevertheless, it was pretty far down the list. We have our first F tier. Andalusian Stallion, introduced in 1979, sculpted by Chris Hess. He fares better than the mare, that is for sure. Although, he is technically also a conformational mess. But comparatively speaking, he at least can have some eye appeal. For example, this 2004 Hidalgo who was sold at Blockbuster. Like the other Andalusians, he was a Breyerfest live auction twice, during the same years I previously mentioned, but we actually do not have sales prices available for him. And he has just been used for a lot of various sets and non-Breyer retailer offerings. Pretty standard classic scale stuff. He's okay, and our first C tier. Arabian Foal, introduced in 1973, sculpted by Maureen Love. Especially for as old of a mold, he is cute. This was actually a Hagen Renneker design to start. Maureen Love sure did love taking inspiration from those molds. Anyway, this guy's been used quite a lot, as recently as the 2016 web special, Glossy Julian and Sophia. Imagine these guys, but in gloss. Some other notable appearances include a live auction lot at the very first Breyerfest. No picture, as you might expect, but we have the description, silver-plated classic Arabian Foal. She sold for $250, which was pretty good that year, and prices were all over the place for auctions that first Breyerfest. But I noticed that the auction lots also had a lot more variety than they do nowadays. I mean, the first 2 lots of the auction were for 10-minute rides on Misty 2. How cool is that? And those went for just $80 each, so I think my favorite example of the Arabian Foal mold is this one from 2015, which was the matte set, and 2016, which was the glossy. But just to offer you one other interesting thing that this mold was used for was a set called Foal's First Day, which included a rose gray Johar and this interesting tin. This set was sold in 1988 through the Enchanted Dollhouse. Arabian Foal, let's go A tier. Arabian Mare, introduced in 1973, sculpted by Maureen Love. Of the 1973 Arabians, the mare is my least favorite. As per usual, it's mostly the shape of the head that throws me off. Yeah, I don't know what's going on there. The fun fact here is that this was another mold borrowed from a Hagen-Renneker design, and because Breyer no longer has an agreement from Hagen-Renneker to use it, it will only be appearing as special runs for the foreseeable future. I do not know when that went into effect, but the last time she was a regular run was in 2005, this Arabian Mare and Foal set, so I'm guessing it was right after that point. The mold is okay other than the face, but she actually hasn't been used all that much given her age. In my opinion, her most interesting outing was as part of the Bedouin family gift set, which was a regular run from 1995 to 1996. The flat black coat is nothing to write home about, and I know that main striping is not realistic, but I like the facial marking, okay? I'm gonna point mostly at that. I like the facial marking. That's it. Taking everything into consideration, the Arabian Mare is C tier, but trust that she is C-. Arabian Stallion, introduced in 1973, sculpted by Maureen Love. I do like this guy, despite his short little neck. He gets points if only because I like, not love, but like, a fair amount of his iterations. For an older example, we have him from the 1993 Toys R Us set, Drinkers of the Wind. I really like that gray on him, even if it's not, again, the most realistic. More recently, in fact, according to Identifier Breyer, it says earlier this year, although I swear it was last year, but oh well, if you know differently, tell me. But in any case, in the somewhat recent past, he was Zane, who was a Gambler's Choice web special. You could get him as one of 3 colorways: a super nice ultra glossy bay, a chestnut Sabino Rabicano, or a flea bitten gray with the blood shoulder marking. I went in for this model because I knew I would be happy with any of the options, and I did get my favorite, which was the blood shoulder. And I have to say that taking a second look at all of the Arabian Stallions, if they showed better, I'd be seeking out the other 2 options of Zane for sure. He is B tier. Black Beauty, introduced in 1980, sculpted by Chris Hess. So this horse's first time out was a bit rough, but a very good example of a mold and the paint job of a Breyer model from that era. Sure enough, with a different and more detailed paint job, he can look nice. For example, there's this nice chestnut version from 2009 who was part of a Bonanza 4-piece classic set sold at Tractor Supply. There was also this very nice liver chestnut example who was sold alongside a doe in a 2005 Walmart set. The most unique offering this mold has been part of was from the 1984 JCPenney holiday catalog. This is called the Collector's One-Horse Open Sleigh. As you can see, we have a flocky dappled gray version of Black Beauty, and everything else here is described as real leather or wood with porcelain dolls, so no corners were cut. Less than 1,500 were made, and all were signed and numbered on the bottom of the sleigh by Riekseckers, who we've heard of before in conjunction with other flocky models. Straight B tier. Black Stallion, introduced in 1983, sculpted by Chris Hess. If you take away the extremely dished face, he's okay. Again, he has been used quite a lot over the years, including as recently as 2022's Desert Paint family set. Look, this picture even had the good sense to blur out the rest of his face, so it's not just me. I actually bought one of the Bay Arabians during its 2011 through 2016 regular run, because that's when I was in my Arabian era, and I kept him in his box on a shelf at my work office for a while. Anyway, he's had all sorts of colorways over the years, from the very vintage dappled gray to the more nicely detailed, somewhat, apricot dun pinto as part of the 2005 to 2006 Western Riding gift set. If we can ignore that face, or revel in it, your choice, I can go B tier. Bucking Bronco, aka Bronco, introduced in 1961, sculpted by Chris Hess. This was actually one of the first classic scale molds. In fact, he was classic scale before classic scale was officially a thing. Breyer did not formally establish that as a series designation until 1975. Anyway, I don't know how I feel about this mold. I appreciate the idea of it, and I could see it being a lot of fun to play with if you had it when you were a kid, but let's just say I got one at an antique shop, because I did. That is not a hypothetical situation. I got the Dakota Bucking Bronco, who was a regular run from 1995 to 1996. He was one of the $8 models I found, if you remember that story. Anyway, I almost sold this guy because, again, I don't feel like he has much utility, especially as a show horse. And he's just one I don't think I've ever had out on display. I don't know. He does nothing for me. I think the nicest one is from 2001 to 2005's Bucking Bronco set. Nice colorway, and I like those markings, but that's about it. He's been used for decos a number of times, including as part of 2015's Zodiac series as Aries. You can see the goat up here. And with two different patterns at BreyerFest 2013 as 500-piece store specials. There was the blue Rockabilly and the brown Headspin. No shocker, that was the Denim and Diamonds year. This might sound low, but I feel like I have no choice. D tier. Charging Mustaino, introduced in 1995, sculpted by Rowland Shaney. He has a bizarre pose. That's the first thing that jumps out at me. And also, the zebra striping on his legs is a bit much. I don't know, he's just a little strange all around. I'm not surprised that he has not been used much at all. In fact, other than his initial 1995 regular run, he's only been used for the Walmart special America's Wild Mustangs series, typically as some form of buckskin or grulla. Although in 2018, he was given this Appaloosa coat. I mean, really, this as an Appaloosa for 2018? Confusingly, the only other thing that he's been used for was a 1,000-piece QVC release, the Progeny gift set Mustaino and his yearling. Supposedly it was just exactly the same as the set he originally appeared in, with this grazing Rojo mold. Just that it was sold through QVC. But supposedly there was no real difference between this and the regular run. I just can't get on board with him. He's an F tier. Craft Kit Horse, introduced in 2001, sculpted by Carol Gaspar. I did not include this in my tier maker list of models, so we are skipping. Cutting Horse, introduced in 1997, sculpted by C.M. Herden. Yay, another awkward looking action pose. I appreciate the idea behind this guy. I just don't think he's for me. I will say he has been used almost every single year from his creation until 2018, by which point he was in the regular run Cutting Horse and Calf set as this Bay. I'm not going to spend a lot of time talking about him. He is a D tier. Duchess, introduced in 1980, sculpted by Chris Hess. Duchess is very much a horse of her era, but I don't mind it here. Also, she was Libra in the Zodiac series, which is my sign, so I can't hate that. She's been used a lot over the years in many gift sets paired with all sorts of other horses and other animal molds. She was even a 1994 BreyerFest live auction lot as a Chestnut Roan Blanket Appaloosa. Enjoy that blurry picture, cause that's all we have. Who sold for $600, which was quite a bit for that year. Even though it's not great, I do like the Red Roan from the Western Horse and Rider set from 2014 to 2017. And I also enjoy her being part of the Surrey to Church on Sunday set. That's her and Jet Run as Flockies. We'll get to him probably next week. And this was a 1984 to 1987 Bentley Sales Company set. Duchess, we're gonna bring you to B tier. Fairfax, introduced in 2020, sculpted by Mindy Berg. Certainly the newest mold for today's group, and it shows. For a mold this new, he, again, I feel like I've been saying this a lot, but he has also been used quite a lot. I actually like him as Delph, the blue and white deco from 2023 Breyer Fest, of which 2,000 were made. He also looks really good as a Morgan, which makes sense because that is the breed he is meant to be. I do prefer this bright bay version to the initial silver bay. You know what? We've had kind of a rough go for a stretch, and I am feeling generous. So could this be our first S tier? Fighting Mustaino, introduced in 1994, sculpted by Rowland Shaney. He's awkward and hasn't been used very much, including not at all since 2008. He is not for me. D tier. Ginger, introduced in 1980, sculpted by Chris Hess. And that brings us to the final horse for today. Another mold I appreciate probably more than I should. Do I wish the face was a little different? Of course. She hasn't been used since 2009, which is too bad because this is another mold I think would look really great with a modern paint job. Like, take this Palomino from the 2008 to 2009 Model Horse playset and TAC activity set. If this was updated to have better shading and some details on the hooves, for example, she could be really nice. Still, I gotta judge by what is currently out there, and although I like the mold itself, I am finding very few that I want to single out as pleasing examples. I think for Ginger, C tier is fair. So that's the end of today's list. To recap, we have 1 in S tier, 3 in A tier, 6 in B tier, 3 in C tier, 4 in D tier, and 2 already in F tier. Like I did at the end of the traditional scale tier ranking videos, I will do a recap and reflection video in which I may change up some of the rankings, but for now, this is where they stand. If you enjoyed today's video, please click the thumbs up, and if you'd like to see the rest of the series, be sure that you have subscribed. As always, your comments, your thoughts on these molds and where I've ranked them are welcome below. That's all for this week, and I will see you next time.